Cannery Row, Chapter 1, Part 2. But to get back to the evening, Horace was on the trestles with the embalming needles in him, and his two wives were sitting on the steps of his house with their arms about each other. They were good friends until after the funeral, and then they divided up the children and never spoke to each other again. Lee Chong stood in back of the cigar counter, and his nice brown eyes were turned inward on a calm and eternal Chinese sorrow. He knew he could not have helped it, but he wished he might have known and perhaps tried to help. It was deeply a part of Lee's kindness and understanding that man's right to kill himself is inviolable, but sometimes a friend can make it unnecessary. Lee had already underwritten the funeral and sent a wash basket of groceries to the stricken family. Now Lee Chong owned the Abbeville building, a good roof, a good floor, 2 windows and a door. True, it was piled high with fish meal, and the smell of it was delicate and penetrating. Lee Chong considered it as a storehouse for groceries, as a kind of warehouse, but he gave that up on second thought. It was too far away, and anyone can go in through a window. He was tapping the rubber mat with his gold ring and considering the problem when the door opened and Mac came in. Mac was the elder, leader, mentor, and to a small extent the exploiter of a little group of men who had in common no families, no money, and no ambitions beyond food, drink, and entertainment. But whereas men in their search for contentment destroy themselves and fall wearily short of their targets, Mac and his friends approached contentment casually, quietly, and absorbed it gently. Mac and Hazel, a young man of great strength, Eddie, who filled in as a bartender at La Ida, Huey and Jones, who occasionally collected frogs and cats for Western Biological, were currently living in those large rusty pipes in the lot next to Lee Chong's. That is, they lived in the pipes when it was damp, but in fine weather they lived in the shadow of the black cypress tree at the top of the lot. The limbs folded down and made a canopy under which a man could lie and look out at the flow and vitality of Cannery Row. Lee Chong stiffened ever so slightly when Mac came in, and his eyes glanced quickly about the store to make sure that Eddie or Hazel or Huey or Jones had not come in too and drifted away among the groceries. Mac laid out his cards with a winning honesty. "Lee," he said, "I and Eddie and the rest heard you own the Abbeville place." Lee Chong nodded and waited. "I and my friends thought we'd ask you if we could move in there. We'll keep up the property," he added quickly. "Wouldn't let anybody break in or hurt anything. Kids might knock out the windows, you know," Mac suggested. "Place might burn down if somebody don't keep an eye on it." Lee tilted his head back and looked into Mac's eyes through the half-glasses, and Lee's tapping finger slowed its tempo as he thought deeply. In Mac's eyes, there was goodwill and good fellowship and a desire to make everyone happy. Why then did Lee Chong feel slightly surrounded? Why did his mind pick its way as delicately as a cat through cactus? It had been sweetly done, almost in a spirit of philanthropy. Lee's mind leapt ahead at the possibilities. No, they were probabilities, and his finger tapping slowed still further. He saw himself refusing Mac's request, and he saw the broken glass from the windows. Then Mac would offer a second time to watch over and preserve Lee's property, and at the second refusal, Lee could smell the smoke, could see the little flames creeping up the walls. Mac and his friends would try to help to put it out. Lee's finger came to a gentle rest on the change mat. He was beaten. He knew that. There was left to him only the possibility of saving face, and Mac was likely to be very generous about that. Lee said, "You like pay rent my place? You like live there same hotel?" Mac smiled broadly, and he was generous. "Hey," he cried, "that's an idea. Sure, how much?" Lee considered. He knew it didn't matter what he charged. He wasn't going to get it anyway. He might just as well make it a really sturdy face-saving sum. $5 a week, said Lee. Mac played it through to the end. I'll have to talk to the boys about it, he said dubiously. Couldn't you make that $4 a week? $5, said Lee firmly. Well, I'll see what the boys say, said Mac. And that was the way it was. Everyone was happy about it, and if it be thought that Lee Chong suffered a total loss, at least his mind did not work that way. The windows were not broken, fire did not break out, and while no rent was ever paid, if the tenants ever had any money, and quite often they did have, it never occurred to them to spend it any place except at Lee Chong's grocery. What he had was a little group of active and potential customers under wraps, but it went further than that. If a drunk caused trouble in the grocery, if the kids swarmed down from New Monterey intent on plunder, Lee Chong had only to call and his tenants rushed to his aid. One further bond it established: you cannot steal from your benefactor. The saving to Lee Chong in cans of beans and tomatoes and milk and watermelons more than paid the rent. And if there was a sudden and increased leakage among the groceries in New Monterey, that was none of Lee Chong's affair. The boys moved in and the fish meal moved out. No one knows who named the house that has been known ever after as the Palace Flop House and Grill. In the pipes and under the cypress tree, there had been no room for furniture, and the little niceties which are not only the diagnoses, but the boundaries of our civilization. Once in the Palace Flop House, the boys set about furnishing it. A chair appeared, and a cot, and another chair. A hardware store supplied a can of red paint, not reluctantly, because it never knew about it. And as a new table or footstool appeared, it was painted, which not only made it very pretty, but also disguised it to a certain extent, in case a former owner looked in, and the Palace Flop House and Grill began to function. The boys could sit in front of their door and look down across the track and across the lot and across the street right into the front windows of Western Biological. They could hear the music from the laboratory at night, and their eyes followed Doc across the street when he went to Lee Chong's for beer. And Mac said, "That Doc is a fine fellow. We ought to do something for him."